Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a threat that affects millions globally, but honestly, it flies completely under the radar for a lot of folks. We're talking about occupational heat stress. And look, we all know it's not just about feeling a little sweaty or uncomfortable on the job. It is a silent, pervasive hazard. It can escalate from feeling a bit warm to a literal life-threatening medical emergency before you even realize what's happening. Over the next few minutes, we're going to unpack the science, the real-world risks, and the highly effective strategies we can use to actually keep people safe. Okay, let's dive into this. When you think of heat stress, you probably immediately picture agricultural workers out in the fields, laboring under that intense, direct sunlight, right? But here is the thing. Whether you are an outdoor farm worker under a blazing sun or you're an indoor factory employee surrounded by heavy machinery, heat stress is a universal risk. It doesn't discriminate. If your body's core temperature rises faster than it can cool itself down, the consequences are incredibly dangerous, no matter where you're working. So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with number 1, the hidden heat hazard. 2, real-world heat stress. 3, recognizing medical emergencies. 4, the science of hydration. 5, safe work schedules. And finally, 6, building a safety program. All right, let's kick things off with section 1, the hidden heat hazard. Take a foundry worker pouring molten metal, for example. Heat illness is absolutely not just an outdoor summer problem. It severely impacts indoor workers, too. Think bakeries, commercial laundries, warehouses, manufacturing plants. In these environments, workers are constantly battling radiant heat from furnaces and heavy machinery. And to make matters worse, they're often required to wear heavy personal protective equipment, or PPE. That gear is crucial for safety, sure, but it literally traps body heat and stops sweat from evaporating. It's basically like wearing a winter coat in a sauna. So when are these workers actually most vulnerable? Get this. A wildly striking statistic from OSHA reveals that nearly 3 out of 4 fatalities from heat illness happen in the very first week on the job. Let that sink in, 75%. It just highlights why immediate awareness and proactive planning are absolutely critical. You can't just throw a new employee into a sweltering environment and expect their body to naturally figure it out. It just doesn't work that way. Moving on to section 2, real-world heat stress. Let's ground this in some real-world realities. First up, a really fascinating micro-study on parking ticket attendants in Manado, Indonesia. These folks work in semi-enclosed parking booths. The study showed that 57.1% of these workers experienced moderate fatigue, even when ambient temperatures were technically below threshold limits, peaking around 29.8 degrees Celsius during the morning shift. So what's the big takeaway here? Well, microenvironments with poor ventilation and radiant heat coming off of vehicles can drastically drain a worker's energy and cognitive function, even if the thermometer isn't showing extreme numbers. Now, contrast that booth in Indonesia with an extreme macro environment. Picture construction workers in the United Arab Emirates, facing temperatures skyrocketing to 45 degrees Celsius. According to Hydrolight's occupational health guidelines, workers in those conditions are losing up to 2 to 3 liters of sweat every single hour. To just survive and function, they need a massive 6 to 8 liters of fluid per 8-hour shift. That's literally the equivalent of chugging 2 to 3 large soda bottles just to keep your body running. This stark contrast shows us that heat stress management has to be tailored. You're either combating poor ventilation in a tight booth or massive, rapid dehydration out on a blazing construction site. Which brings us to section 3, recognizing medical emergencies. Listen to your body, because there is a stark, bold line between early minor fatigue and a full-blown, life-threatening medical emergency. Early warning signs like a headache, dizziness, or intense thirst, those are your body's signals to stop, rest, and hydrate right then and there. But if a worker starts showing slurred speech, fainting, having seizures, or if they have hot, dry skin, meaning they've completely stopped sweating, their body's cooling mechanism is broken. It has failed. That is a heat stroke. You need to call 911 immediately and start actively cooling that person down with ice or water. There is no time to hesitate. It's also super important to remember that the environment isn't the only thing at play here. A worker's personal health factors can drastically multiply their risk of a sudden heat emergency. OSHA points out that things like age, overall physical fitness, and how much physical exertion the job actually requires are major variables, but here is something that might surprise you. Everyday routine medications, like antihistamines for allergies or standard blood pressure meds, can actually interfere with your body's ability to stay cool and hydrated. It is a huge risk multiplier. All right, let's look at solutions. Section 4, the science of hydration.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the science behind what we drink. Research from Hydrolite highlights a huge misconception. They found that drinking only plain water without electrolytes can paradoxically increase urinary losses. Wait, what? Well, when we sweat heavily, we aren't just losing water, we're literally bleeding out essential minerals like sodium and potassium. If you try to replace all that massive sweat loss with just plain water, your blood's sodium concentration drops. So your body responds by actually increasing urine output, meaning plain water fails to restore your cellular hydration and can actually increase your risk of severe dehydration and those awful muscle cramps.
So, how do we fix this? We have to turn hydration into a scheduled process, not just a panicked reaction to feeling thirsty. Here's what a highly effective daily hydration schedule looks like in practice. Step 1. Pre-shift. Drink about 400 to 600 milliliters before the work even begins. Step 2. During work. Take in a consistent 150 to 250 milliliters every 30 minutes. Just keep it steady. Step 3. During breaks. You want a larger dose, 300 to 500 milliliters every 90 minutes. And finally, Step 4. The post-shift recovery. Workers need to drink 150% of the fluid weight they lost during the day. It's not a one and done. It has to be a continuous, proactive cycle. Let's look at how we structure the workday itself. Section 5, Safe Work Schedules. Central to safe scheduling is this crucial concept that OSHA emphasizes heavily, and it's called acclimatization. Simply put, this is the physical change that allows your body to gradually build up a tolerance to working in the heat. But here's the catch, and this is a critical takeaway. This isn't just a rule for the brand new hires. Experienced veteran workers, returning from, say, a week-long vacation, they are just as vulnerable to heat stress as the new guy on day one if they aren't properly reacclimatized. To safely onboard workers, OSHA recommends something called the 20% rule. It gives managers a really tangible, step-by-step formula. Step 1, limit a worker's exposure to hot environments to just 20% of the normal workload on their very first day. Step 2, increase that exposure by a maximum of 20% each following day. And Step 3, allow the body to reach its full tolerance over a period of up to 14 days. This methodical, slow-build approach, that is exactly how you prevent those tragic first-week fatalities we talked about earlier. Finally, let's talk about the big picture. Section 6, building a safety program. When we're dealing with indoor heat stress, the absolute best approach is to just engineer the hazard right out of the workspace entirely. Employers need to fire off specific environmental controls. We're talking about installing air conditioning, dramatically improving space ventilation to get some active airflow going, putting up reflective heat shields to bounce that radiant heat away from the workers, and properly insulating hot surfaces like furnace walls or heavy steam pipes. And whether you're indoors or outdoors, that core OSHA mantra has to be practically applied. Water, rest, shade. But listen, it is not enough to just have water sitting somewhere on the premises. Shaded hydration stations with active cooling must be clearly marked, and they have to be accessible within a 5-minute walk of literally any work area. Because, let's be real, if it takes too much effort or time to get to the shade, workers simply won't do it, and the whole safety program fails. I want to leave you with a provocative question today to really chew on. Are you managing heat as a minor discomfort, or are you treating it as the escalating occupational hazard that it truly is? Understanding the science of hydration, recognizing those early symptoms, and actually implementing robust acclimatization schedules, this isn't just some regulatory checkbox. It literally saves lives. I hope this explainer gave you some valuable insights to evaluate and maybe even improve the safety protocols in your own workplace. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, and please, stay safe out there.